Welcome to another episode of In Your Business. Today we're going to meet with an entrepreneur who has a local establishment as well as national and maybe even international as far as I know, but we're going to learn about him on the show. We're going to learn about what his organization's doing and the impact it's making right here in our local community. It's interesting how entrepreneurs can not only just have that local impact but also have national impact, and learning from these entrepreneurs makes it very, very interesting for people like myself. So today I'm going to be learning as well as the audience watching is going to be learning. So Hillel? Hillel? Is that how you say your name?
Hillel, yes. Thank you, Tim.
Very interesting name. I want to learn about that, also learn about you as an entrepreneur, but then also learn about the Leland Legacy. And the Leland Legacy has been a very important facility in this community for so many years, and you'll know the story far better than I, and we're going to share that today.
Looking forward to it. Thank you for having me on.
Let's start with that name.
Okay.
Tell me exactly how I should be saying it.
Well, the name is Hillel. It really comes from the word hallelujah, and it's a shorter word to Hillel. I was named after a great uncle that was responsible for bringing my grandparents over to this country. His name was Hillel. And out of respect to him and for what he had done to at least support my grandparents, their first grandchild being myself, my parents named me after him. And that's the name that I have. And I've enjoyed it. It's been, sometimes people will ask me how to correctly pronounce it, and I appreciate that. And they'll ask me what the origin is and stuff like that, and that's just how it came about.
Super.
So I'm happy with it.
Well, I'm sure you bring him great respect, so
Hopefully.
That's awesome.
Hopefully.
That's awesome.
He was a great man.
So let's talk about you as a child growing up, because I always like to learn about the entrepreneur that's behind the business, because when I was growing up, I thought I was going to be an attorney, and that didn't happen. What were you thinking when you were growing up?
That's a good question. I always was very handy. I was always good with my hands. And Reader's Digest, when I was a young boy, had these really thick tomes that were hard-covered on how to fix absolutely everything that you had in your house. And so whenever my mother would buy a new vacuum cleaner, I would tear it apart and try to put it back together again. Windows and drywall and stuff like that. I've really had a lot of success just with tools and stuff when I was younger. Electricity is something that I kind of shy away from. I've kind of been knocked up against the wall a couple times grabbing the wrong set of wires. So I'm kind of hands-off with electricity. And as things developed and I went through school and high school, and in order to get through some of the college costs that I had, I actually was working for some family members in Baltimore as I went to Towson State in an apartment building, and I would fix things in the building itself, and I kind of enjoyed that kind of interaction with what I was comfortable in my own little surroundings with my tool belt and the stuff that I was doing, and then interacting with the people. And the real estate idea of being able to create a very lovely home for somebody, whether it be an apartment or a single-family home, appealed to me. And after I had finished my bachelor's degree, I pursued a real estate broker's license, and then from there I went on to manage property for other people, and then, thank God, today I'm managing property for myself.
Wow.
So that's how that came about.
That's awesome. What did you concentrate in college? What was your study?
So I was actually supposed to be a civil engineer and build bridges and hyperbolas and kind of designs and mathematics, which wasn't really my strong point. And once I kind of finished with those studies, I really felt that I had more of a hands-on perspective of things, and as opposed to just working with some diagram or architectural drawings on a table, I wanted to really be engaged with both the object and the people that the object would affect. Okay. And so that brought me into a larger spectrum of being able to expand what it was that I was doing, so that when those people, the renters and the tenants that needed something to be attended to, I had a real hands-on and personal interest in it. And that made a difference for me as opposed to just dealing with a piece of paper. I felt that I had a one-on-one with someone, an engagement with somebody that I was comfortable with.
That's great. So I can see how that would turn into something you could enjoy as well as helping people.
Right.
So let's talk about the Leland Legacy. And around here we call it the Leland, but the Leland Legacy. When did you acquire that?
So that was in February of 2015.
Okay.
And so we've had it for about 4.5 years. And I had actually completed working for a family that had a number of different assisted livings. They were independent living, assisted living, memory care, and a home health care company that was all kind of combined into one unit. And they had a number of different areas that, to some degree, more so in some than others, but I had overseen some of the development of those projects. And by nature, I'm a developer. I see space and I kind of see opportunity to try and develop that space, which led me back to working with my hands all the time.
Sure.
And so when a certain building or all the areas that they had reached their point of where there was no more development, then it was time to look for something else. I'd been with them for about 13, 14 years, something like that. And the opportunity, so for the next year after that, I just spent looking around at many different projects. Probably looked at about 6 different projects in Wisconsin, here in Indiana, some in Ohio, and the Leland, then it was called Lamplight at the Leland. And the Leland presented itself with a magnificence as you walk in, and a presence of what that atrium is as you walk in the building. I fell in love with the edifice itself. And if I could get a sense that the people that were there, not just the residents, I'm talking about the people that were in control of taking care of those residents, were as magnificent as the building itself, I knew I had a win-win situation. And so I took a look at it. I went through the building, met with the key people that were operating it at that time, those that were from the ownership and those that were there on a day-to-day basis. Amanda Marquis being primary to that. She was engaged there as the marketer, and today she's the executive director. And so many of the people that I first met when I first came there are still there today. And some of them have had years and years of longevity with the Leland. And that spoke to me in the way that if people are going to take care of seniors, there needs to be a passion, and you need to love where you are, the workplace where you are, and you need to love what it is that you're doing for people that you really want to care for. And I took it to heart that, and I've always had this feeling that a resident that's there, they may not be my grandmother, but I would want my grandmother to be treated this way. I would want my grandfather to be, I would want my Uncle Hillel to be treated that way.
Sure.
And so I met people like that at the Leland, and they're still there today. And that's, you ask about investing necessarily in Richmond, perhaps. True, the Leland Legacy is fixated, it's fixed in Richmond, but without people that are Richmond people, Richmonders, Richmondites, the Leland wouldn't be what it is today.
Sure.
And so what makes the Leland magnificent is just the dedication of the people that are there, and the product and the care and the loving care that they bring to the residents that are there. It's a beautiful place to come.
It truly is, and it's one of my favorites. And I think, you know, the stories behind that, and it's quite interesting to see people so happy and living there because they have the stories of when they were growing up in Richmond and the ballroom and the activities and the dances and all the activities that took place there. And they all have so many great stories, and they raised their families around it. So for them to...
it's historic, and it means a lot to many, many people.
It does.
And I didn't want any of that to change in any sort of a way.
So where are you from?
I'm from Chicago.
Okay, so you're in Chicago today. Well, not today, you're here with us today,
Right.
but you flew in this morning, is that correct?
So I actually I drove in from Cincinnati.
Okay.
After, what my philosophy is to be at the property 2 or 3 days a week.
Okay.
I don't micromanage, I micro-knowledge.
Okay.
And so what happens is, if you trust the people that are there, and you have some sort of a supervision over them, then you allow them to do what they need to do. But if you micro-knowledge and you know everything, and you become engaged with a particular resident, I can tell you a resident whose gait is off. I could tell you a resident whose speech may be slurred all of a sudden, or whose diet, who's lost a few pounds. And that's called, you know, the micro-knowledging, the knowing about who your people are. Micromanaging, if you've got the right people in place, leave them alone. Let them do what they need to do. Circle back, have your meetings, whatever you need to do. So my philosophy was to be there 2 or 3 days a week, and for probably the first 2 or 3 years, that's what it was. We've put in over $1 million infrastructure over and above what it was to cost the purchase of the building to really enhance what the building needed, longevity. You know, some of the infrastructure that needed to be done so that it brought those services that the employees and the nursing staff and the dietary staff bring to the residents can be done with a little bit more ease. So we put in a lot of money into the property, which has only given us more and more returns because people recognize that now the property is in a much sounder condition, and it can just run as an assisted living. So for the first couple of years, I was here 2-3 days a week. Recently, I now have two other assets that are in Ohio. And so I'll be here 2 weeks out of a month as opposed to 2 or 3 days every single week out of a month.
Okay.
That only speaks to the success and trust that the people that we have in place at the Leland can carry on what it is that the mission for the Leland is, and they've sustained it all throughout. And I couldn't be more proud of who they are and what they've done so far for the residents that live at the Leland.
Sure. And I'm going to come back to a little bit more information. I want to learn about the Leland, but I also want to find out about like the ownership. Are you a sole proprietor? Are you a partnership? Is this an organization owned? How is the ownership structure?
So I have another partner, 50-50, and the ownership is he owns half, I own half. Then on paper, we'll say that ownership then leases out the property to an operator, and that operator then hires a manager. So you have really 3 different concepts. In the end, because of regulatory issues and financing issues, the way to design it would be you have a RealCo and an OpCo, and then the RealCo would be the real estate entity that owns the property.
Okay.
You have an OpCo, which would be the operations entity that functions and runs the property.
Okay.
Then you have a management team that works within the operationals team, then reports back to the operationals team.
Okay.
So granted, I've got one pocket talking to the other pocket, talking to this pocket, because I'm involved in all 3. But in terms of you're asking how the ownership is designed, that's how it is. What that allows for is that the objectives that the RealCo company wants to accomplish strictly focus on those benefits that are within the ownership of real estate. The operations strictly focuses on the day-to-day operations, and the management has to work within that operational scheme of what it is that the operation wants to see, how to direct some of those investments, and what are the results and what kind of profitability that the management company needs to bring back to the operation so that it's a functioning, viable business. It is a for-profit business. It's not a non-for-profit business. So, and thank God it has. When I got to the Leland, there were 69 people that were living in the building.
Okay.
Today, we have close to 100. We have room. The license does have room for 109, but I don't think feasibly it's possible. I think we could potentially have about 105.
Okay.
And it has a private pay possibility where if people are capable of fully paying for the rent on their own through whatever savings they may have or whatever pensions they may have, then they can pay privately. And they can still receive some of the nursing benefits that they need to have depending on what level of care they may have, and we'll charge appropriately. Now, when those funds kind of run out because they get depleted because they're just so long that they last for, they can transition into a Medicaid waiver program, which is a wonderful, wonderful program that the state of Indiana provides, where the individual Social Security is used to pay for room and board. The state assists in paying for the nursing services, and the resident doesn't have to move out of their apartment. If they convert from private pay to a Medicaid waiver, they stay in the same building, the same apartment. They eat at the same dining room table where they were before. And the lovely thing about a place like the Leland is that you can go to the dining room and everybody's the same. They're all seniors. That's the lovely thing about the Leland. Economic background is absolutely insignificant to me. And the state of Indiana is a healthy state. It's a viable state. It has a wonderful Medicaid waiver program where our billing department, which does a wonderful job of the billing cycle, allows us to continue just to have that profitability built into it. And I have to say it's been a God's blessing from day one, meeting the people of Richmond, meeting the people of the Leland, and then the state of Indiana. I'm just very happy to be here.
Well, I think that's a great compliment. Thank you. I'll thank you on behalf of the people in Richmond. But also, I want to ask you a question, though. How many other facilities might you own?
That's a great question. My answer is all the same, always the same. People ask me, how many employees do you have? And people ask me, how many residents do you have? And my answer is always the same. Some days too many, some days not enough. You can have a building with 100 people in it, and it's a miserable day.
Yeah.
You can have 5 buildings with 100 people in it, and it's a wonderful day.
Okay.
And so we don't count. We just count our blessings.
Okay.
And
All
the
right.
Leland is definitely a blessing.
Well, because when I started the show, I wasn't sure if it was just local, national, or international.
Right, I heard that.
And so I wasn't sure if you had some assets and dealings internationally, or if it's all.
I don't have any businesses outside of the United States. So far I'm in Indiana, I'm
Okay.
in Ohio, and in Ohio I personally own I have partnerships with two other people in two different locations. And I do some consulting now for another larger organization in a greater sense of Ohio. And I do some independent living, assisted living and memory care consult work for them. So I'm engaged in a number of different arenas, but I'm involved in ownership of 3 particular properties right now.
Okay. Very busy person.
As I say, some days I am, some days I'm not. It all depends on how those operations are running.
Yeah.
You know, when I go back to Chicago, when I was an executive director at a facility that had about 365 apartments. And you know, my mother always wanted me to be a doctor. You know, every Jewish mother wants their kid to be a doctor or a lawyer.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to be a doctor, but I always loved medicine. And when we initially introduced the nursing component in the assisted living facility that I had in Chicago, I became very interested in that whole nursing component. It had been an independent living until then. When the nursing component came in, I became an assisted living. And I became an EMT. And when I go back home, actually, I'm a volunteer EMT now for the last 10 years. And I work for a private company. I'm not employed. It's a volunteer basis, alongside with 911 Chicago Fire Department. And because of that, I've expanded my medical understanding so that I can be sensitive to whatever degree I can. I can actually understand when a nurse is saying, Hillel, we need to go down this path, and we need to look at this sort of service that we need to provide. And I can understand the benefits that the residents are going to receive. It's because of that EMT background.
Sure.
That only came out because of my assisted living environment. So all those you talk about, what did I want to be when I grew up? Mm-hmm. Sometimes you think you know what you want to be, but there are these things inside that when the opportunity presents itself, all of a sudden you take advantage of those opportunities. And so I'm proud to say that, you know, getting involved in real estate and multifamily apartments and homes helped me understand taking care of residents that are seniors in a multiple family environment. I needed to learn the entire food industry because when I had apartment buildings in Chicago, I never had to prepare breakfast for anybody or lunch. But here at the Leland, we do. And then that gave me the opportunity to understand medicine a little bit differently. And it's just been a very beautiful arrangement that things have fallen into place the way they have so far.
Well, just in the short time we've gotten to know each other, I think of you as a true entrepreneur. If I was to put a photo up, it would be yours. However, do you think of yourself as an entrepreneur?
No. Opportunist. I think an opportunity, I recognize some of my strengths and some of my abilities. I recognize some of the things that have shortcomings. You want to find the arena that best suits them so that you can be productive. And so the opportunity of where I wanted to create, I wanted to develop space, I wanted to work with people, and I wanted to make people's lives better in whatever way I could. Mm-hmm. So politics was out. I wasn't going to do that. But I wanted a hands-on involvement in making a difference. And I've always taken pride in saying to myself that if I don't have a defect in my house where I live, you know, I don't have an exterminating problem. I don't have a plumbing problem. And if I did, I would fix it.
Sure.
Well, then there shouldn't be nothing that is deficient in the senior that's living or the family that's living in an apartment building. Location is location. Right? People choose to live where they want to choose. But once you're in those 4 walls in the apartment, it should be no different than the comforts that I have at my home. And so that gave me of where I could create that space for people. And in a great way, that's really who I wanted to do, what I wanted to become. Make something for somebody that they needed some assistance on my behalf to do. Okay. And thank God it's been rewarding in many, many ways.
Sure. When we're talking about today's entrepreneur. So many things have changed. Social media, how we do business, how we attract business and such. Has social media affected you?
Remarkably. First of all, everybody has an opinion, and they can post it and put it anywhere they want. And so you really have to be mindful of that, and you're challenged by that. You want people to have an opinion, because other people's opinion, if they're at least critical in the way that they're helpful, constructively critical, constructive criticism is always helpful. Nastiness really has no place anywhere. I think that in general, one of the lovely things about Richmond is it has an old American flavor to it, that the way we used to do things, the way people interject and interact with other people, the way you don't dismiss anybody, you engage people. That is the heart and soul of Richmond as a whole, and that's part very much of what the Leland Legacy provides. So social media is a challenge, but at the same token, it gives you an opportunity, if you take it in the right vein, where you can learn from what it is that's being said so that you can improve on what needs to be said. Are you always going to make everybody happy all the time? No, it's an impossibility. But what we have found so far here at the Leland is that we've been able to grow. We hear wonderful things, people talk about the Leland. I've always suggested to the staff that the Leland doesn't belong to me, doesn't belong to me and my partner. It belongs to the state of Indiana and the beautiful city of Richmond. And because of that, you have a ballroom, you have a cafe that recently opened up, which I think you're planning to talk about. There are things that in doing at the Leland, I had to be mindful of what placement, what does it do for the Richmond people at large? There's a nucleus, it's like concentric circles that keep going around. The heart of that concentric circle is the Leland Legacy. Then you have the people that live within that environment. Then you have the community of Richmond, and then you have the larger Wayne County, and so on and so on. What difference does the Leland make to the people that live there? It's obvious. What difference does the Leland Legacy make to the people that work there? I think those that really enjoy working there find it to be a place where they can grow, where there's opportunity, there's ability for growth within your own given departments, and you can even branch out and go to a different department if that so suits you with your education. And you want to, if you're in dietary and you want to become a certified nurse so that you can assist people in a different way than you were before. Those options are there for you to have, and we invite them. And then what does the Leland do for the community at Richmond at large? And there are commercial spaces that are there, and that clearly invites commercial business. But then there are schools that bring their classrooms there, and they work together with the seniors. And there are other organizations that come to the Leland because it's a community environment. People got married at the Leland. They want to see that ballroom. So when you change the carpet on that magnificent staircase that leads up, you got to be sure you're picking the right carpet, because that's an entranceway into somebody's memory.
Sure.
And that's valuable, and you want to make it special all the time.
Sure. I know you've done your history work on this. What is the age of that building?
We just turned 90 years old. Okay. So I think in August, June, or I think it was June, I don't remember exact date, but we had our 90th birthday. So the Leland Legacy is 90 years old. The Leland Hotel is 90 years old.
Is that what it started as?
It started at Leland Hotel, yes.
So it was the Leland Hotel, and then do you kind of know the history from there?
From there, it really went to a privately owned organization that developed it. It actually went from the Leland Hotel to another hotel, possibly two. And then from there it went to a senior environment.
Okay.
But it did not reach the presentation that it has till probably almost 2 years ago, after we put in the kinds of money we did. And there used to be a pool there.
Yes, I do recall that.
Right? And you talk about memories, so people talk to me about their memories in the pool. Well, there's no more pool. And so that was a huge decision. And what had happened was, because we are an assisted living environment, we provide nursing care. And there's a full complement of a director of nursing, registered nurses, licensed practicing nurses, and CNAs. And you want an environment of where they can take care of the residents in a fluid movement. Residents come in, they see who they need to see, and they leave in a private sort of a way, in a privacy where nobody has to see how they're coming out, where they're coming out from, and the way the Leland laid itself out, that it was never meant to be to the level that it is today, an assisted living environment with the kinds of nursing attention that it has today.
Sure, understand.
So it really never provided for the residents a place of privacy and a place of respect. And when individuals are receiving direct medical care, those are the two things you want to provide most: privacy and respect. And so here there was this beautiful pool, about 4 feet deep. And nothing would ever go bad there. But it's 4 feet deep. And it was a pretty large pool. And we really weren't getting a lot of people from the Leland utilizing it to the level that it could have been used. There was, and there still is today, one resident that lives in the building who was using it as aqua therapy. And I had a decision to make. Here's this one woman, and she's still there, as I said, utilizing it on a constant basis for her aqua therapy. And it was great. I mean, she was improving all the time. But there are 80 more, 90 more people in the building, and something is economically, it just isn't working for the rest of the 89 other people in the building. What can we do with that space? So the first thing was I went over to the young lady. She's a senior. We'll call her a young lady anyway.
Sure.
And I said, listen, here's the situation. How about if we subsidize for you to go to the YMCA, a neighborhood pool where you can continue your aqua therapy. We'll drive you there and back, and I'll pay for your membership. Would you allow us to turn this into a wellness center? And she gave us our blessings.
Good.
She said, go ahead if it's going to help the rest of the people. And we did it. And she wrote me a beautiful card. I still have the card. And what we have now is that pool was completely filled in. And it was about $350 some odd thousand to do all the kinds of work we need to do. And as you walk in, there's a nursing center, which is just enclosed in glass. Then there are individualized rooms, treatment rooms, where the residents can just go in privately, behind a curtain, get the services that they need from the nurses, and leave out a back door, in and out, and a very fluid movement with the director of nursing offices being able to visualize what's going on, with the nurses themselves being able to visualize what's going on. And so, while granted, it has advanced our ability to look better, but it has done a magnificent job of being able to one-on-one in a much better, much more efficient, much more private and sensitive way delivered those kinds of nursing services that the residents are they're thriving because of this now than before it was a hassle.
That's awesome.
And it talks to them to understand that this is a design that was created. So I guess I did become a civil engineer.
You did.
I designed a space.
Thank you for taking the time to be here today.
Not at all. It's been a pleasure, Tim.
This concludes another episode of In Your Business. Today we had an amazing entrepreneur. He doesn't call himself an entrepreneur, but man, you could see the pride he has in the city of Richmond and what he's doing with the Leland Legacy. I'm proud to have him on the show. I'm proud to have him as a part of this community. He may not live here, but I'll tell you what, he's family to us. Thank you again for watching In Your Business.